computer. Okay, so here we are. Welcome to Planetary Gig Talk Live. I'm Jefferson Glassie, Chief Spiritual Dude of the Planetary Gigs Society, whose mission is creating unity through music, but as I like to say, making connections through music with the intention of bringing peace. And I have to tell you, I'm really, really excited about this conversation today. We've been sort of thinking about this for quite some time. Music and morphic resonance. Wow, what a topic. We'll talk a little bit more about. Oh, there's the bird clock coming on. We're right on time, I guess. Just to introduce our panel, then I'll give a few more other thoughts. First of all, 5-time Grammy Award-winning musician, percussionist with Bela Fleck and the Flecktones, Roy Futureman Wooten. Roy, it's always good to see you and hear what you have to say.
So good to be here. Looking forward to getting down the rabbit hole today.
Several of them.
That's right. And also our instigator, good friend of mine, artist, illustrator, fabulous person who turned us on to this topic, Patricia Raine. Thank you, Patty.
So good to be here. I'm looking forward to it.
Yeah. And also Peter McClard, author, musician, got to know him through Michael. And it's his birthday as well. So happy birthday, Peter.
Happy birthday.
Right. Yes.
It's a real honor to spend it with you.
Yeah, well, you may be spending the rest of the day with us because I don't know how we're going to stop talking.
It's vast.
Anyway, for those out there listening, Planetary Gig Talk Live started last year as sort of conversations about music topics. And one of the topics that came up at Victor Wooten's Spirit of Music Camp, always does, is Ho'oponopono in music. And Roy is very knowledgeable about that, been involved in that. And so we had, and Patty is too, we had 4 different conversations about Ho'oponopono in music. And during some of those conversations, Patty would all of a sudden say at some point, Morphic Resonance by Rupert Sheldrake. And I'd go, right. But I didn't know anything about it. And then finally looked at a couple videos, and I tell you, it is just amazing. He's brilliant. I think this concept of morphic resonance, there's so much I don't know about it, and I have watched a lot of the videos. He has videos on why is there beauty in the world, spiritual practices. I would highly recommend checking those videos out. Otherwise, we'll try to explain here what's going on. We're going to talk about music and morphic resonance, and there are so many different connections. We'll just see where it goes, but we're going to start off with Patty giving us a little bit of a sort of an intro explanation of what this is, and then we'll just go down some rabbit holes. Patty.
I'll be Alice.
10 feet tall. Okay.
Well, first of all, morphic resonance is a hypothesis posited by Rupert Sheldrake, who is a British developmental biologist. And I'm going to use his words. I'm reading from my notes here and his definition. He posits that memory is inherent in nature, and the so-called laws of nature are more like habits. Each species has a kind of collective memories, all plants, animals, and each variety of those contributes to that collective memory and draws upon it. That's really important. It contributes and it draws upon it. This relates to, and relating to the human aspect, the original hypothesis of Carl Jung is the collective unconscious. So there are radical aspects in this theory. Our own memories don't depend on stored memory traces inside our brains, but rather on morphic resonance from our past. And the idea of morphic resonance is based on similarity, similar patterns of vibratory activity in self-organizing systems, influenced across space and time. And so he says similar selection system works from the past to the present across space and time, does not work independently of space and time, which would mean we'd know the future. But he allows for the fact that we can have precognitive things which bust through the whole space and time thing. So influences of from the future are much rarer than those from the past. And because we are so similar to ourselves in the past, that's why we resonate with humans more than any other organism. It's very radical and very disconcerting for his fellow biologists to hear. And so his history as a developmental biologist, he was a research fellow with the Royal Society and at Clare College in Cambridge. He was working on the development of plants and how they form their leaves, stems, and roots. They were studying a substance called auxin, AUXIN, endoacetic acid. It was made by dying cells. It was a breakdown product of tryptophan. And they studied this, again, as a product of wood cells. They looked in wood cells, the dying cells. And he said, we studied it, and we found out, the movement, and it moved in one direction, but it did not explain. It became clear that the phenomenon of auxin didn't explain how the plant species, how they formed themselves, the plant, leaf, and root, and flower, why they were so different. So he got interested in the idea of form shaping fields, like invisible molds or blueprints for developing systems. And the morphogenic fields was first proposed in 1921 by Russian biologist Alexander Gurvich. And in that he says, genes don't explain forms. They explain control of protein synthesis. And so he thought there had to be some other explanation for how these plants were formed, and ways that form was inherited. So he said he was stuck for a couple of years. And but finally realized that the biology is historical. It's not just a reflection of Plato's ideal forms. It's a historical, a meme. So he had new insights on morphic resonance, which came through his literary reading of French philosopher Henri Bergson in his book Matter and Memory. He was inspired by reading Marcel Proust. Was also influenced by Bergson. And Bergson, memory is probably not stored in the brain. And that a form of causation that was directly related in time, was directly related in time. There's another form of causation. And the revelation was that there could be causation that worked at a distance in time, meaning there was a map, there was a blueprint extant already that sentient creatures were drawing upon.
Nice.
So yeah, so he said in his account, he said, I was thrilled. He was jumping out of his boots. And he tried to share this with his biology colleagues, and said they were less than thrilled. Didn't go over very well. In fact, he was excoriated. But it opened up whole new doors. He was asked to speak at Esalen. Philosophers and historians, and everybody was completely, and religious people completely on board with this theory. So he realized too that the chemistry department, his biochemistry department, was not the right place to publish his first book. So yeah, that's basically, let's see, what else? He worked in India, he worked everywhere. But again, what he's been doing for the last years is espousing this theory and also doing experiments to sort of prove, again, that this theory does exist. It's like the 100th monkey you mentioned, Roy, earlier.
You want to mention the crossword puzzle one or the?
Yeah, one of the experiments was a woman believes the Evening Standard. She proposed that they do an experiment whereby hundreds of people would take this crossword puzzle the night before it was published. And heretofore, the crossword puzzle had been solved in pen by people maybe 25% of the time. I don't know. I don't know the percentages. But because this woman proposed as an experiment to have all these people solve the puzzle the night before, the next day, the percentage went up to like 43 or 50% of the people got the puzzle. They solved the puzzle. And it was huge.
It had been solved before, and that was
It had been solved, right?
In the air or in the ether or wherever.
Well, it was established again. But think of what he's talking about, that the creatures, we contribute to this resonant field and we draw from it. So it was they basically did reportage. They did a reportage of how they're learning, and it was drawn upon unconsciously by large groups of people who did the crossword puzzle the next day.
Yeah.
Now,
So that's basically it in a nutshell.
Yeah, and mention the dogs waiting for their owners too, if you don't mind. Just so
yes, he
kind of get a little bit of the
Another famous experiment.
Another famous experiment is dogs know when their owners are going to come home a full 20 minutes before the owner comes home. And he said, as soon as the person, they did experiments, as soon as the person has the intention of traveling home, the dog, they had cameras on the dog is alerted and goes to the door.
Yeah, and the sense of being stared at. I mean, he's done studies about this, and we all know these things. Let me ask Peter, you want to just chime in with a comment and then go to Roy, and I'm going to let Linda too.
I love this conversation, and I love the fact that we're going to keep it very oriented towards music, because the word resonance and morphic resonance is a type of resonance, and it's a type of field, and for musicians, we deal with resonance all the time. That's sort of our currency is resonance, and frequencies and harmonies and consonants and dissonance, and all those things are used.
The bodies of instruments.
Yeah, the bodies of instruments and all the beauty that's there, and the ugliness too, is all a part of this expression. And so I think we're going to find a lot of connections between what Rupert was discovering and has experimented with and has intuited a lot of it too, just like Einstein intuited relativity at a time long ago and was proven to be right. And I think this will probably be the same way, in the future, as more of these experiments are done and as more is understood. But all I would say is, I think, there's always going to be a tendency of someone to want to have some sort of proof of the existence of these fields. And that's sort of the scientific side. But I would say to that the universe has so much potential for multi-dimensional activities. They've already, in string theory, for example, 11 dimensions so far. And just the existence of these dimensions and the existence of the mathematics really allows for this to happen. And if you say the universe is also an eternal universe and has already been here in eternity, it didn't have a beginning, as Stephen Hawking in his later life believed, then you're going to get into some amazing possibilities of what happens at the end of eternity. Well, we're there right now, so think about that.
Yes. And I would love to follow up just for audience members who may be getting like that. When he talks about these fields of influence, the way that you can kind of understand is when you think of a magnet. A magnetic field is not all contained within the magnet. There's a field that's going around the magnet, and it's sucking in on this side and pushing out on that side. So it's showing you that it's coming this way and going that way, and there's a field happening. Yeah. And that's what I learned even clearer watching the videos that you sent, Jefferson, for us to look. I saw that even more clear. He's saying our brains are like the magnet. where it's tuning in the fields that's all around. It's not located all in the brain. The brain is like a magnet, like it's a tuner that's receptive to all of these fields. And so therefore, when you stare at somebody and people can feel you staring at them, it's because we exist with fields running, you know, and people can pick up on it. So when Patty talked about the experiment, no, who talked about the experiment where a bunch of people solved the crossword puzzle the night before, and it affected the field the next day. Well, that's the same as the 100th monkey experiment, where they teach a few monkeys how to wash sweet potatoes, and then before they know it, there's monkeys on all the other islands doing the same thing. To me, it's the same story. And this is what Rupert Sheldrake is putting his finger on, that there's a field going on. And now when we bring this into music, there's a bunch of musicians that say, man, it's not even like we're writing the songs all the time. He says we're just catching them. If we don't catch them, when they go by, they go by. We miss them. It's going to be for somebody else. It's almost like we're a radio station and we're just catching these ideas. Everybody's talked about that, from Mozart. It almost gets spiritual. So there's a book with classical composers talking about that, how they're just transcribing stuff that they're hearing, and they're like a tuning fork.
They're tuned in. They're tuned into those frequencies for sure.
Yeah, I've heard Bill Monroe, all kinds of people talk about we're just catching these tunes.
Yeah, Bob
right?
Dylan.
In ancient Greece, it was called, the collective unconscious, or the collective from whence we draw all these things, was called the muse.
Yeah,
and there were seven muses.
Yes,
I mean, they identified them.
And I think Roy also pointed to a beauty of the fields too, and it's probably true of all the fields, just as yin yang is true, is that they flow in and they flow out. And that's what you were also saying, Patty, where we're writing to it and we're writing from it, we're inspired to it, we're inspired, we breathe in, we breathe out. And so, that's also a continuous function. So it's coming in and it's coming out through creativity and whether it's improvisation or you're sitting there and you're composing, either way.
That's and that's also the mathematical torus.
Yes.
That's what a torus does.
Yeah.
Right.
Torus,
it goes
out. That's the yin yang symbol was trying to make visible the torus.
Right. And really, if we go on down a rabbit hole in music, the torus, which is a spiral, is implied in the symbols of music. Like when you see the bass clef spiral,
right.
It spirals one way, but the treble clef is basically the bass clef, which is up here. The spiral's at the bottom, so it's showing you as above, so below. One comes in this way, white hole, the black hole sucks in, the white hole spits out. We've got this above, so below, but the theme that I want to get at is when we're talking about spiraling, the word spiritual, you know what I mean? Inspire. What goes around comes around. You know what I mean? Like everyone's hitting at this spiraling nature of reality, how it spins. Like I was saying earlier before we started, I would notice as a kid, when we let the bath water go down, all of a sudden it goes down and the water takes the time to organize itself into this beautiful spiral. And I'm like, why do you do that? Why don't you just go down? You know what I mean? It seems like it would just go down, but no. It takes a thing, it makes a beautiful spiral. And that spiral relates to the tornado, the toilet bowls flushes down, just like all the galaxies that you see out there got that same spiral.
Well, so it's like the spiral allows so much to happen when you think about, say, a musical scale where it returns at the octave and that diatonic scale or chromatic, either one, any scale at some point hits the octave and it becomes the same note. And if you can put that easily on a spiral, you can have it, your bass notes out here and you can spiral into higher frequencies if you want, and you get smaller and smaller. And each time it doubles in frequency, you have an octave. And so the musical scale itself can easily be put on a spiral too. And
right. And and in honor of Rupert Sheldrake's research nature to this, when I listen to scientists like Jean Worrell Keeley, who was all about vibration and frequency, when I study Dr. Ibrahim Karim, Walter Russell, they all talked about nature working diatonically in 7 stages before it goes to the next phase of itself. So frequency starting off as rhythm, you know what I mean? Just starting off in the beginning was the rhythm, man. We can't even see it.
Mhm.
Then all of a sudden you can feel it, it's vibrating. Then all of a sudden it turns into a tone. Then all of a sudden it goes up another octave, it turns into light. Light is the same octave, right? And it works diatonically. You got a
Right.
white light. You think it's only one white light, but you split it with the prism, and there you see the scale, all the 7 colors.
Yeah, you
Right?
go from infrared into ultraviolet, and then
Now
you're up to an octave right
you
there.
you go into another octave now, right? Yeah, and so it's like even with the music in the 7 notes of the music scale, if you start on each one of those notes and go that note to that note, it gives you another mode. You know what I mean? It gives you
I honestly believe that is throughout nature. And let me give you one really wonderful example.
yes.
Take water. It's H2O, 2 to 1 ratio. Now, hydrogen is 1 atomic in weight, and oxygen is 16. 1 to 16 is also an octave. It's doubling every time. So, but they mix in this H2O, and guess what? Water tastes exactly like an octave sounds. An octave is just sort of like this pure thing that isn't super interesting, but it's beautiful and it's perfect. And doesn't water taste that way too?
All right, we in the music now. We in the muses now. So if we had this conversation again, it would be nice to have someone who's what do they call it, where they can taste the music? Synesthesia.
Well, we do, Patty.
Oh, well, there you
I
go.
don't know
Right?
what you'll say about water, but certainly.
No,
Yeah.
I see
But-
sound.
Yeah, you see in sound. I wrote a script that I'm working on. Well, I've already written it, but we're working on more. But the writer, her whole family saw words all in colors. Like when she's writing the script and stuff, she said the colors are working out from the
Right.
words. Like, and so like whatever it is, this tuning fork that we are as a human body and a brain, the way that we're resonating from whatever it is that we came from, I think it's what Rupert Sheldrake is putting his finger on. And so that when he talks about, I made a note, he talks about our consciousness is like science wants to think that we're the center of consciousness and not that we're part of larger consciousness out there, that we're part of something even larger than what our consciousness is, and that we're embedded inside of that. And I just like the way that he's kind of tuning into that. This is like we're in a field of consciousness. Octopus got conscious that's different than our conscious. You know what I mean? The bird has a different kind of conscious. We got a certain kind of conscious. And the idea that nature and all of this beauty and order and form that we see in nature is somehow an accident of a big bang, and that's it. It's like somehow you're gonna miss the genius if you stick with that.
That's almost like a cop-out. That's too easy. It's kind of trying to fit everything into a neat little package that it doesn't fit into, obviously.
Yeah,
and, I've always felt that way about, and I'm a lover of science. I think it's fascinating. And yes, if you play back the movie backwards, from the way stars are moving, and you can imagine it coming down to one point, but you're going to get down to that point. And you're going to get down to that one little point, and you're going to say the entire universe is in that one point, and then you're going to be right back to where every religion starts, which is some fantastical sort of spiritual moment there that you don't understand or comprehend.
Yeah, but it's neat how, like, if we can just kind of grasp, it's like as above, so below, right? So we have this great organization, and we're the organisms, right? And for the organisms to get created, there's an orgasm. See what I'm saying? Now, to me, an orgasm is a better word than a Big Bang. See what I'm saying? And whatever is created has one. See what I'm saying?
I like that.
So in the beginning, if you say it was a big orgasm, now we're getting to something. Because guess what? All the organisms have that too, to make other organisms.
Yeah.
You see what I'm saying?
And that also brings me to some of Sheldrake's lectures on beauty, which are fascinating. When he gets into, why is there so much beauty in the world? And he talks extensively about, visual beauty. And I was thinking about, he gets into some musical beauty, but I was thinking beauty is in all, for all the senses. You have, when he's talking about a flower, he didn't really mention the fragrance of the flower so much, and the way it sways in the wind, and all of the other beauties that are in that flower. The visual is there, but every sense has a beauty, and sex has is a touch beauty. Touch is a beauty of this that sense. But there are probably all these other beauties that we're not even aware of: magnetic beauty and electric beauty, and all these other senses that we're not tuned into yet.
Right.
Yeah. That made me think of what's his name, the scientist Dr. Emimoto, when he freezes the water, and then he
Yes.
sees how the water freezes, and if it's inherently beautiful, it's responding to something
Yeah.
that's inducing that beauty. Go on. What were you gonna say?
Well, seeing the water crystallize after it's been played Mozart
Yeah.
versus after it's been played acid rock, heavy
Yeah.
metal.
Yeah.
What happens, how the water crystallizes and how it forms itself. It forms itself in beautiful proportion patterns with Mozart and in complete discord with heavy metal.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. So before we got on, I posted some stuff because I got a chance to meet this dentist, Dr. Ricketts, and he was responsible for a lot of the advances in the art of facial reconstruction. And what they were finding was that the body is full of Fibonacci ratios, right? And so after a while, they knew that this one, there's 1 to 1.618, and it was all throughout the face, and so they could tell right where the teeth and the nose and where everything was supposed to go. So people with deformed faces, I didn't even know there were people like that. He would show me the pictures. There's people who couldn't close their mouth. He showed me people that look like the Elephant Man, right? And they would come to just get their face fixed. And he said they could put a graft on, and because they knew the proportions. So with the bone specialists, they would cut to the proportions and fix the face. But what they discovered was when the face got fixed to proportion, they weren't just fixed, they came out beautiful. He said this was a profound discovery. He said, so what it is that we're tuning into when we see beauty has to do with proportion. It
Yeah.
crosses all race.
Which for musicians, that makes so much sense, because if you look at a pipe organ, it's a beautiful thing to see, first of all, because you see the mathematics and the proportion of the
Yes.
of the pipes, and it's a work of art, but it's also a functional work of art that makes tones along those proportions.
Yes.
And of course, architecture uses all those proportions. But I sort of propose here that music underlies a lot of that proportionality in all of those different fields, and that there's a musical component. And so, like, when a dog sees you and vibes off of you, and you have a bad vibe, they're picking up on something that's it's out of proportion, or it's dissonant, or something like that on a musical level, possibly.
Yeah.
Let me mention one thing. Rupert does have a number of videos on animals, and one thing where I think we can see this is murmurations of birds or fish. I was actually driving yesterday and saw, you don't see them that around here that often, but a murmuration of a bunch of birds, and they're well, how do they know when to turn and where to go all at the same time? That's got to be something beyond just their brain. Same with fish. And same with musicians, I think. They're playing along. And I know, Patty, we were also going to get into, you have a little bit of organization for us in terms of some things to guide the conversation a bit, I think, music wise.
Yeah, music. We talked before we went on air. We talked a little bit about with Roy the change of orchestral tuning from 432 to 440, and that was done arbitrarily, politically, in the 30s. Joseph Goebbels, who decided that orchestras would now tune to 440. But what 440 does versus 432 is it creates discord.
Just enough.
Just enough.
Just enough.
So people feel slightly off. They feel like they're walking on quicksand. That's what 440, I mean, but it's subtle and you can't put your finger on it.
Right. And so before we started this conversation, I said, because I'm working with samples, orchestra samples, I can hear whole orchestra scores all tuned to A432, because Patty said, we want to hear Beethoven at A432, which
Yeah.
is scientific tuning, what Mozart and them call scientific tuning, right?
Right.
Yeah, it was down lower. So I said, with these samples, I have my whole scores tuned to A432 now. So I can do mock-ups, right? And I'm listening to Star Wars. Ba 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 ba. Right? And in A432, it just didn't have the same bite. Like, I had to put it back to A440 to get that, like, that little edge. You know what I mean? Like, it gave it the tension. So now, as an artist in the muses, we're aware of something so subtle. If we want to do that in our soundtrack or something, we know that if we nudge it here, we can nudge it to something that has a little spicy to it, you know?
And you know what's really fascinating about that is great musicians in our lifetimes have automatically tuned to that. Because if you try to play along, if you're trying to learn a guitar part and you listen to Jimmy or someone like this, and you put it on, you go, okay, wait a second. He's not tuned to my 440 here. I got to tune
Right.
down. And
Yeah.
I think there was a gravitation naturally. Same with Van Halen, other musicians.
Yep. I heard Ralph Stanley tune to A432, Bob Marley tune to A432. Good
Yeah.
vibrations. It's all about A432. There's artists.
Brian Wilson was all about 432.
Boom. Let me drop the mic on that.
But it's also just, you don't even necessarily have to get your tuner out to do it. You just find the one that vibes with you. You tune until it feels right too. And that's also another way you do it, is you do it with your mind instead of with a machine. And you will find that you're in that range.
Yeah, a lot of rock and roll would tune lower for that. Just to get that rich thing.
In an earlier panel, Joni Mitchell used to listen to the sounds of nature to create her tunings, her impossible tunings that nobody could quite get. They just had to work, but she listened to the sounds of nature for that.
Right.
So
that's part of, but to get back to morphic resonance and this, I imagine 432, I would say, is part of the so-called spiral. It's part of the proportion. It's part of the aesthetics of what we're drawing upon morphically. If there's a morphic field for this, that's part of what we're drawing upon. And I think, diabolical human minds can come up with ways to manipulate proportion. I mean, when I say diabolical, sometimes you're having fun with it, but when like Goebbels, when you're creating an entire, changing an entire way for orchestras to function.
Yeah.
And slightly disturbing, and they knew it was.
Yeah, they were methodical about it. So for people who are following this conversation, Goebbels was Adolf Hitler's
communications guy.
Communications dude. Yeah. The head communications dude was Goebbels, right? So check it out. So when they instituted, they're going to make all the orchestras tuned to this tuning, because in the past, most people kind of were gravitating towards a lower, towards a natural thing, right? So to make it stick, they said Goebbels' family, they were bell makers. And so they made tuning forks and sent them all across the world. So now piano tuners are all tuning to Goebbels' standard, and it becomes a standard. So a piano tuner was saying, yeah, we know this, but it's going to be hard to go back to another tuning because this is the standard, right? So I'm just saying how methodical they were about it. And for me, it was just like, well, I'm a musician. Why is it that he knows more about tuning than I know? So I just look at it like that. I just like to know about it. But I believe that once we know about it, like Peter was saying in our early discussion, a musician wants to put some bitter inside the pretty to make the the flat fives and to make stuff interesting. And so what happens is now we use it, like, to me, it's like we're using it as an artist now. Just like for me to get Star Wars to have that edge, it didn't have the same edge that it had at 440. It sounded like it had that bitter, it had that another thing that it didn't have. At A432 was all like settled out. I was like, no, we need attention.
artists get to do that. And, speakers do too, because when you speak, you have a musical aspect to your voice. And, some people have a beautiful voice that just resonates with and I think a lot of times those are probably related to the same sorts of things. And they're more in tune with either nature or
Right.
with the world or the fields that are there.
Mhm.
And, maybe having that 440 as a standard has caused people to not speak quite properly, or I don't know, but
Well, it's
Well,
so
that's a lot of
it's.
things. Oh, go ahead.
No, I was just gonna say it's so sublime. Yeah, go on, Patty.
I'm just saying when you what's interesting here is if you're talking about drawing from the field, and if 432 is the proportionate frequency,
Yeah.
is the optimal proportionate frequency for an orchestra to tune to, then yes, as artists, you can manipulate that and play with it and show people counterpoint and, work in the cracks between
because
the black
music
and white
always works with tension and resolution.
tension and
Exactly.
resolution. Yeah, but
Exactly.
when I'm just saying, contrasting that to what Joseph Goebbels did, the propaganda minister,
Yeah.
he took an entire,
Art.
entire orchestra, the whole musical, and he overlaid a
A standard.
Yeah, a standard over that could not be altered.
Well, because
Right.
they were the ultimate sowers of discord. That was their major
Yes, and that's
contribution to history was discord.
But that's called creative totalitarianism.
Boom. Okay. Now, to me, this totalitarianism is what Rupert Sheldrake is breaking out of when it comes to science.
Yes.
That wants to have totalitarian on your theory. We can't talk about nature and consciousness because that don't fit with our thing. And he's saying, well, look, yeah, but he's saying he's trying to induce pluralism, and I love that, right? He says pluralism. He says in political parties we have pluralism. You don't want just one party. You need to bounce off another ideology, right? He says in religion you have more than one religion, right? And he said, there's the fault is to focus on only one thing like it's in a vacuum. And so this
nature,
when you create that one, yeah, you create that one tuning like Goebel and them did, and everybody's locked to that, and not knowing that there's other maybe more optimal things.
Monoculture kills biological diversity, and the thing doesn't survive. It's not survivable, really. I mean, it's actually foolish to try to go down that road of monoculture. It's a dead end, basically.
Yeah, with people too. So just like with the murmurations again, maybe talk a little bit about when musicians are playing music together.
Yeah.
And you don't, if you're not following the sheet, the music, it's like, how do you know, really? You may have some basic chords, but all the beauty comes from the conversation, the interaction. But how do people know that?
Well,
I was at a jam last night. It was a big raucous jam, and everybody was belting out and just giving our best. But it's always uncanny in a group. Everyone knows, you say, okay, I'm starting with the G, and that's the one chord. Then you know right where to go. You can feel it. You can feel the proportion, you can feel the sound, and you can feel the rhythm when someone sets a tone. And even if there's sort of cacophony for a while, it always resolves,
Yes.
You're instinctively connected, and you're all connected up to a larger blueprint. And that, it's music theory, but it's also feeling.
Maybe it's the same with singing also, the happy birthday that everybody starts out, blah, 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 and then by the end of the song, they're
doing harmonies, 3-part harmonies.
Right. But here's one profound thing that Rupert Sheldrake got into when he talked about sports, right? He says when people are playing sports, he talked about physical action. He talked about meditation being a form of meditation where your consciousness can kind of tune into a larger form of itself, right? But he talked about sports and telepathy, right? And when you're on the field of sports, like athletes are like they're in mental telepathy with each other, and the audience vicariously is participating in that thing. If you see a rock climber, you know, you have to be here now. That's a form of meditation where everything else you're not thinking about this, that. You're thinking about be here right now, or else you're not going to come off alive, right? So this is cool. And then he talked about sports and telepathy, and then he talked about see the book called The Psychic Side of Sports by Michael Murphy, right? That book interviews team players on telepathy being quite common, okay? And he said physical skill as a part of games, right? He says once you have sufficient skill in something, you can get into a sense of flow where you're just in the zone,
Right.
right?
Right.
And the East, people have always recognized that sports have a spiritual dimension, martial arts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? That's why spectators get into watching this flow vicariously. You're seeing
Yeah.
something beyond, you know. So the martial arts is meditation as it is physical. So now this applies to teamwork in a band. You know, when you're part of a band, you're on a team. And there's a lot of times you're in the zone. Like you're just playing. Like many times I'm playing what Baylor's gonna play. I didn't know he was gonna play it, but we're just hitting it. Like
Yeah.
he's like, man, it's like you're reading my mind. You know? So
And
there's
you
this
are.
right. So the audience that goes to a music concert also has a sense, is a vicarious witness to this
Yeah.
kind of thing.
Well, and
You
they're
know?
in a lot of ways, they're
Participating.
participants too,
Yeah.
because they are giving you energy.
Yes.
You know, if you were just doing it in the studio, it would not be the same vibe as when you're in front of that audience.
Right. Yeah. And people, I think you can hear it like we with Flecktones, we sat in with Dave Matthews Band and we played the tune 41 for almost 41 minutes. To us, it seemed like 15 minutes went by, right? But it's like everybody's vibing off of each other. You can hear us bouncing back and forth like we knew what we were gonna do, and the audience is just participating in it. And I think that's why audiences like to see jams. Because it's not you, they know you're not prepared.
And you know, as Sheldrake did these experiments on people and animals staring at you, and that ability to perceive that psychically, that you're being stared at, even when you're
Yes.
not, you know, in direct line, that's real. And when you got, you know, 20,000 eyes staring at you, their intention is on you.
Yes.
It's you know, it's also, you know, that's another weird thing is like in quantum physics, if you observe something, you change. And so
What is
it's right down to the very fundamental reality.
right?
As soon as it doesn't even exist until you stare at it, really.
Yeah.
Right.
Patty, what did you
Yeah.
Say that the audience, remember the audience, if you're watching someone improvise, watching that improvisation, the audience expects the people who are doing the improvisation to follow a map. And they expect to see something novel come out. That's what, you know, you're following a map. You're following the similar thing that's already in the morphic genic field.
Yes.
They know you. They know how you sound. They know how you behave. And then to watch you behave on a super level, on another level, simply because there's improvisation going on.
Yes.
And
Yes.
you're picking up, literally, you're picking up counterpoint and counterpoint on counterpoint.
And there's not time to think. In improv, there's not time to think.
No,
You have
it's
to
all
do it.
body.
You
It's
have
all
to do
somatic.
it. You have
Right.
to do.
Right. Which I think that's the appeal of jamming, jam sessions for audiences. You know, because if we played with Chick Corea or that, at the end we'd always jam.
Yeah.
And the audience would just love this. Oh, this is not even prepared. It's just here, it's just gonna happen right now.
and
you know.
and must be connected
Yeah, and you get to show your
energetically
chops.
somehow.
Yeah, but it's just that communication is just something so profound that can happen on the stage like that, and then the audience can witness it. So what he says about telepathy in sports could be written about telepathy in music at the same time. I
Right.
think. Yeah.
And even I think almost on a more sublime level, even though I think sports is its own kind of genius, but the musical genius is this communication on this emotional, intellectual level that's spiritual too, you know, in a direct way. And I think music just goes to those higher chakras.
Yeah.
So
Yeah.
intensely.
And what's cool about go ahead, Patrick.
I
Patty.
was to say, and sound, remember, sound is form. So you're creating all these forms. When you're jamming, when you're creating sound, you're creating all these forms between you and the audience, between you and whoever you're relating to. I pulled out this book on Clodney patterns. Remember we talked about Clodney
Yeah, cymatics.
and cymatics?
Cymatics, yes.
These are the forms that you're creating.
Right, yeah.
So every
Overlapping, they're all
note
overlapping.
that is struck, every tonal value that is struck is creating a form that resonates with the audience. So you're creating this big collective matrix of appreciation and coherence. That's what's happening. That's what I was saying that to earlier, saying like the spinal cord is like a tuning fork, and the
Yeah.
teeth are associated with the spinal cord. So the sound that's coming to the audience is zin, 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 resonating in their spinal cords, and it's going right to their body, man.
Yeah.
And I love one of the things I love about the way nature does it is so much of what we're talking about, fields, whether it's gravity, magnetic, morphic, or music, they're invisible. They're not,
Yes.
you don't
Right.
see them with your eyes, you
Right.
hear them, or you feel them, or you feel them
can.
with your minds.
Yeah.
Well, no, you can, and that's a different type of usage of the same thing. But when the
Yeah.
ones that hit your ears are much more like free form, it's like
Right.
looking at the ocean. It's more like the ocean, and
Yeah.
filled with
Yeah.
waves.
Speaking of the,
And it's so interesting
ahead.
talking about music. I don't know if you guys can see that at all.
Yes.
Right? See that spiral right there? Where
Yeah.
the spiral kind of closes in on itself is where the teeth start to come out. Right? And then next to it, I think I drew the treble clef, where you can see. Oh, here, over here.
Yeah.
You can see how it's the same symbol.
Yeah,
The logarithmic spiral.
yeah.
And then they show another picture just like that, and the baby in the womb is wrapped up in that same spiral. So this
It,
morphogenic.
according to this fellow, and this speaks to music too. So if music is played when a woman is pregnant, you play music.
Yeah.
I mean, there is kind of a resonance going on, but in his book, Richard Gerber, Vibrational Medicine, talks about how when conception takes place, literally the conceiving, it is in a spiral, and it's following a holographic map.
Wow.
Following a holographic map, it's less about genes, which are transfer proteins, than it is following this map, and they've measured this.
And that's what Rupert's talking about.
That's exactly what he's talking about.
Yeah.
So
And I
that's
think that
resonating with the morphic map of humanity.
yeah. Yes, and I think on our conversation we skimmed a couple of things. I want to say when you talked about our consciousness looking at the experiment, for people who don't know what we were talking about, this goes when scientists are studying particles and they're studying waves, and so they're sending beams through slits in an experiment and seeing what designs they make on the other side. And if you're not looking at the experiment, they make designs that look like waves. You know what I mean? But as soon as you look at it, they start acting like particles. They start act like they ought to. And they start making dots. Oh, we got to go through the beams because he's looking, right? I just believe we're right on what Rupert Sheldrake is talking about.
Now that's when he's talking about projecting consciousness. And, it's not necessarily even a directional thing, although sometimes it seems like it is. It seems like you project consciousness in a direction. I'm not sure there is a direction to it, but that is very weird that you change the thing you're observing by observing it in a direction. But I don't like to think too much about direction, because I like to think of dimensions as much more complex than just our 3D. It's 4D, 5D, 6D, and those are the things that fascinate me, is that these fields are like these fractals, and their fractals are not just on a piece of paper or on your computer screen. They're in 3, 4, 5, 6 dimensions.
Yeah.
Not just in the colors we see, it's in all these other colors too.
Yep. Right. And there's a baby being born, so many dimensions of creation happening. And see how it relates to the spiral again?
And every cell in that baby has a copy of that baby in the DNA of each cell. And that shows another holographic.
Hologram.
Yes.
That's
and it seems like, it's like the baby's being resonated into creation. Like Rupert Sheldrake says it's so good. He says we have a mechanistic theory of nature, but there's no machines creating anything in nature. You know what I mean? There's no machines building that tree. You know what I mean? It's like, how does it do that? It's like, all of this creation, and it's quiet. Like when nature grows that big tree, you didn't hear a machine making a whole lot of loud noise. It was
Oh.
quiet.
Yeah.
That's profound right there. That's resonance. That's
Yeah.
the profound thing that we're talking about here.
Yeah.
Just the whole thing of, you know, we believe we see the physical reality in this desk and this chair and that, but there's so much more beyond it. And Rupert's theory really helps, you know, make sense of that, in a sense. Telepathy. You know, one
Yeah.
of the things I heard him talk about was, you know, when you see, you know, we know that the light goes in the eye and turns upside down and goes on the back of your eye, the retina, and you see it there. But he says, actually, you then project out that vision out there. So you're kind of, we think we're just passively seeing, but we're actually also projecting out and creating.
Yeah, I think he makes a really good case there. And
Yeah.
Yeah, let me throw in one other thing. Because at Victor Wooten's last Spirit of Music camp, it was about trying to be able to play like a child. He showed some videos of kids playing, and they're just, you know, they're just playing air guitar like crazy. And you know, how do you get back to that? Well, really, in some ways, the main presenter that he had with him, he had a number of different people talking, was an animal tracker, a spirit tracker, John Young,
Oh.
who had learned from Tom Brown Jr. You know, Vic was very influenced by him, and I've been reading his books and going down that rabbit hole too.
Nice.
And John Young was saying, and there's some videos on this, the animal communicator is one, where he says, when you're looking at tracks, you're looking at the physical, you know, the imprint, and the deer hoof is this way, and so it shows that maybe she was looking that way or whatever. But he said, when you're really tracking, like the Bushman in Africa, when you see the track, John says, you kind of looking at it, and all of a sudden you like become one with the animal.
Boom.
And you just know where the animal is.
mhm.
And, you know, for hunting, etc., you would, okay, animal, I'm coming to get you. And John and Anna, the animal communicator, I forget her last name.
Anna Breitenbach.
Yes, this is our birthright. This is the way it was, you know, that you would basically learn from the plants, learn from the animal. I think that's how humans really kind of grew up, in a sense, and evolved. You know, you could hear the trees, you could hear, you know.
Right. Yeah, and
There's
Jefferson.
I was going to say, there's the law of similars. The law of similars in homeopathy, in herbology. You look at the walnut; it's shaped like a brain. It does help the brain.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
You look at all these things; they're shaped like certain other patterns. They have certain patterns, so they looked at what was similar.
Well,
Right.
even evolution is, if you step back and look at evolution, it's also the growing of something. It's the growing
Emerging.
of the earth, and it also is following a growth pattern too. Evolution is itself. And even if we evolve into machines, I guarantee you it's a part of nature. It's something nature wants to do. If we become silicon beings, we're not going to escape reality all of a sudden. If we're still conscious, it really doesn't matter. If we're still loving, it doesn't matter. If you become discordant entirely, of course, then you probably will go extinct, I believe. But I do think evolution is also governed by the exact same thing that governs that one little embryo or that tree or whatever it is.
Right. And to echo what you just said, it's funny how the word love spelled backwards is EVOL. If you spell evolve, it's almost a palindrome of the word love. EVOLVE. It's love going both ways. Evolution is hiding the word love in there. There's a love revolution going on.
Revolution.
Love is always the funny bone, man. I love you, man. Right?
Yeah.
Religions argue over evolution, right? How can it be evolution and creationism, not knowing it's the same thing? See what I'm saying? It's like arguing over division and multiplication. Does the cell divide or multiply? We can fight over that, but it gets more than what it started off with.
Right.
You can call it division, we can call it multiplication, we can call it evolution, or we can call it creation. We're still talking about the same thing.
Yeah.
And love is in the center of it. See what I'm saying?
Yeah, I
I
agree.
evolve you, man.
I evolve you. What's the highest law? They said, Jesus said the highest law was love you one another. We're supposed to get along, even when we don't get along. We're not supposed to blow each other up just because we
Right.
don't get along. Like I'm driving. To me, it's like the traffic light. I'm driving down the road. I'm in a hurry, but when it's my time to stop, if I break that law, I know there's a risk that I'm going to bump into somebody. See what I'm saying? Evolution is trying to get us to do that. We're supposed to evolve together, right?
Yeah.
So, Jefferson, I was going to echo something that you said about
Spirit tracking?
what's the last thing you said before?
The spirit tracking?
Yeah, and spirit tracking. For people who don't know what he's talking about, you can Google and see this movie called The Animal Communicator. And in there, when John Young is tracking, I'm watching the movie, right? I've been to VIX camps. I know about tracking, but they say, notice it's dark. And they're still tracking the animal. And they say, you can track to see, you see the face of the animal. And they say, all of a sudden, a silver cord will come out of the track and lead you to the animal. So they're in the documentary and they're following a silver cord. To me, we just went to Dr. Seuss. That don't make no sense, right? Right? But you see all these other Bushmen describing the same thing. They're following a silver lifeline.
That's the song lines.
Yes, it's the Aboriginal people talk about the song line.
Is
What
that
I'm saying,
is that a ley line? I've heard of that.
well, it's like a life force, right? It's some kind of life force that they're tuning into. My thing was that they weren't even looking at the tracks. It was too dark to see the tracks. So I'm saying that to say when Rupert Sheldrake is talking about morphic resonance, it's just like he's talking about something. Scientists is looking at the tracks, and he's like, dude, we're not even looking at the tracks right now. You know what I mean? We're following a silver cord that's leading us right to the truth.
Right.
So I'm just saying that to me that sounded so
But
ridiculous,
it's not
right?
your eyes that are seeing it; it's your mind's eye.
It
And
led
that's-
and it led it right to the animal, right? And so much so that it's like nature is communicating in all of these ways that science can't measure. See what I'm saying? Like, how does science measure perfume, really? You know what I'm saying? Like, how you really know what I smell? It's what you smell.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? You just know I smell because you know how to smell, right? But if I told you I can smell this thing and you didn't know how to smell, scientists is looking in this lab and they can't prove, and they're just way behind.
Yeah.
Well, in
So
a lot
to-
of ways, I think that we're also talking about, they call it the sixth sense sometimes, right? The
Yeah.
other sense. And I think that might be a good way to do it, but it might be more than six senses. It might be 10, 12, who knows how many
Well,
senses.
think about it. Think about it. You talk about Patty can see colors. I wrote with someone writing a script for the Black Mozart, and all of her family, when they see letters, they see them in colors. So we're talking synesthesia now.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Those are senses.
And that's part of the morphic resonance. That's part of sound creating form. As a synesthete will either taste color or see sound. I see sound, I see form, I see shape, I see metaphor. And I know that that's coming through me. I know that I'm tapped into something that's morphogenically created. There's a field I'm tapping into, and it's mutual between me and the person I'm observing. It's a mutual event.
Yeah.
And I will see, and the metaphors do indeed relate to the person. And I'm as Brits say, I'm as gobsmacked as the next person because what? That relate, what that means? It's
And
really
I think getting back also to what you were saying earlier, Roy, about the organism and orgasm and the whole of the body. I think Mr. Sheldrake also is very keen on this idea of not giving too much power to one part of the body or one part of our being. The brain is not everything. And I would even, at least my intuition says, look, my brain, first of all, goes throughout my body and my nervous system. If you take out the whole nervous system, it's this weird thing. But really, the whole body is one big receiver. It's the whole body is receiving, and that body has fields that go out who knows how far.
Right.
Or who knows how deep. It's not always far. Maybe it goes in deep. We always think about far, but what about deep?
Exactly. Yeah, because there's some teachers that say as above, so below, that the brain and the stomach are actually one organism.
Yeah.
Right? And that's why the great people, they got to clear their mind. Jesus got to fast 40 days before they can do the great stuff.
Yes.
It's like clearing your
And
mind. Like, whoa.
they found recently
Mhm.
Parkinson's and other diseases are related to gut bacteria.
Yes.
So in a certain way, this whole microbiome that we have is one living forest of connectivity, you know,
Right.
and trees themselves are also another type of connected being out there that
I
they
was saying
communicate
earlier,
too.
we had our earlier conversation about teeth emerging at certain spiral points.
Yeah, right at the logarithmic spiral.
And the teeth are related to the spine. 32 teeth, 32 vertebra, they're related to the spine, and whole arrays are related to endocrine systems. So if you have a problem in the liver, it will show up in the corresponding tooth.
Mm.
If you have a problem in the tooth, it will show up in the liver. You know, it's a feedback.
Well, that's similar to reflexology too, where those points on your feet also are supposed to
Exactly.
point to those organs too.
It relates to the chakras.
Well,
I do all this
explain
work.
that, Patty. Patty. Oh, Roy or Patty.
There's the logarithmic spiral showing right where the spiral is where the eruption of teeth happen.
Right. Well, the teeth, each array of, you know, teeth in our mouth, they have nerves that connect to the spine, to the vertebra in the spine, and those relate directly to endocrine systems and certain organs. And so, and this is classic Chinese 5-element medicine too. It relates to these here, metal, pancreas, it all relates, you know.
Wow.
This is all
That's
sound.
there's a pentatonic right there.
Yes,
All-
it is.
all
It's a
related.
circle of fifths, man. So
Uh-huh.
it all relates to sound.
It's so cool.
This is
circle
Chinese
of fifth.
Yeah, this is Chinese
Right.
element theory.
Uh-huh.
So if there's a problem, but if there's a problem in the liver, it'll show up in the corresponding tooth. If there's a problem in the kidney, it'll show up in the corresponding tooth array and the spine, you know. So if you have lower back problems, that's liver.
Whoa. Okay.
Yeah.
A couple things. I just heard the bird clock go off, so we've been going an hour, which is cool. I wanted to read a comment from Chrissy Cook. 2 comments actually on watching on Facebook. She says birds and fish, like we humans, have high levels of magnetite in the brain that is the internal GPS that can be honed to a specific frequency.
Boom.
I don't know what else about that, but she also says, you are all speaking directly to me. This is how this group is gathered through morphic resonance. We are all riding on the same morphogenetic field wave. We are the same vibrational frequency and resonance. We are the perfect vibrational match. We are one.
Nice.
I like that, Chrissy. Thanks for
Thank you, Chrissy. Thank you, Chrissy. And a lot of times you'll notice when bringing it back to music, when you see a music star, they are morphogenically resonating with their audience. Their tribe is coming there. You know, like if you see where Lady Gaga or Prince, it's like they've resonated their people there. Like, because you just wonder, like,
and that's love too. That's a lot of
it's love. You know what I'm saying? Like, I look at my friends Carter and Dave Matthews. They just playing their music, man. It's like they're not wearing a meat suit. They're just playing their music, and all of a sudden the place is just full.
Yeah, the Beatles, my God.
The Beatles.
That's what I was saying earlier. How about the audience is intrinsic to, it's intrinsic to the relationship going on between the performer and the audience. The audience is expecting a certain map. They want something that's similar to what they've heard. They want something that's similar, so there's a resonance. And when they actually hear it and see it performed live, it does something to you, and it goes to your spine.
Well, I also, speaking of the Beatles, I've watched. I haven't watched it all yet, and I look forward to some for my birthday.
We watched that. We went down that rabbit hole. Get Back.
That is so fascinating because you are looking at you're really looking at everything we're talking about in a lot of ways. Interactions between humans on a psychic level, but you're also looking at creativity, making something out of nothing by being tuned in. You're watching, like when Paul makes the Get Back, and he's just there and he forces Get Back into existence. And then, when Billy Preston shows up, you feel the tuning change of the whole band, and you feel an opening up happening, and some tensions are released psychically for the band because they're no longer just in that that foursome there. It's now they've got that 5 to balance it off. It's like all of a sudden
Exactly.
when
The
that
perfect
5 got
fit.
in there, you could feel the energy just opened up right there. And it was a beautiful, that was a beautiful moment, actually.
Yeah, Billy Preston, the 5th Beatle, evolved that band at the last, just when they were about to break up. He brought them to another level.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He had to do with walk in the room.
Yeah, and I was, you know, I know we're running out of time, but I was going to say when it comes to music, a lot of times what we're feeling when the shuffle of music feels good, the shuffle or jazz, what makes it swing has something to do with proportion. So I'm just going to show this right here. This is a picture of the face, and you start to see, this is from Dr. Ricketts, who was a orthodontist who showed me how they started seeing proportion in the face, right? Leonardo da Vinci, right? Right, but they were seeing in all the different angles, which told them exactly where to put the teeth, everything. It's, you know, they saw it in the relationship between the teeth this way. It was everywhere, right? So what I wanted to say is when he was saying Fibonacci, I was going to say how Fibonacci is the sequence of number, and the first number is 1, the next number is 2. But the theme where you don't get lost is that it's always the short number next to the longer number after it. So it's always short and long. And the way we know it is 1 and 2. That gives you everything because you add them together gives you 3. Well, 3 is the triplet, 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 da 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 da. Right, but triplet is also when you learn the rule of thirds. Right, when you're doing photography, the rule of thirds. You got 1 section, then you got 2 of those sections. Here's the thing that could help you to remember: when you do 1 section short, 2 sections long, you put a line through it. It always makes a holy cross. The short section next to the long section is always the proportion of the cross. When you think of stopping a vampire, the cross always has a short section and it has a long section. Yeah. That's what it's doing the whole time. From 1 to 2, from 2 to 3, 3 to 5. It's always doing short to long. Yeah. And so this is starting to introduce and lead us to what they call the golden proportion. Because you can divide the short section into the longer section, and you'll get a number. And after you go about 12 numbers in, that number locks on 1.618.
You know guess which musical interval is closest? Guess which musical interval is closest to the golden ratio?
Well, what?
Sixth.
Sixth?
Yeah.
Wow. Right, as my brother calls La. Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la. Yeah. Allah. You know what I mean? Allah. There's all kinds of spiritual things leading to that 6th. Yeah. You know? Yeah. Allah.
Right. And the 6th is also a third. That's a mirror third.
Right.
Yeah.
Right.
Uh-huh.
Patty, did you have any other thoughts you wanted to bring out about rules of music? We've really covered a lot of these things, genres, tonal values, frequencies. I'm just want to make sure that I didn't have anything else you wanted to.
I just think of habits of music. You know, there's music theory, and as Sheldrake found out that he sort of broke through supposed constants in so-called laws of nature. That the speed of light, he found out, is not constant. And in music, I was thinking, isn't it interesting to find out if theory of music, these are habits. I mean, are there constants? You know, are there always constants? And it seems like we're always breaking the rules. And in art, you're always breaking the rules. Yeah. You're always playing around with it. And it's novel. It has a novel effect.
Yeah.
So I just wanted to talk about, so-called these habits. And when those habits of music are broken, it really does affect the listener. Like they, it alerts the listener, alerts the spine, it alerts the whole body is alerted because it's the body mind. You're listening, you're taking it in, and there's something novel being born.
Yeah, that's such a good point. I really think that, like, when I think in terms of art, right, a lot of times someone will introduce a discipline, or exercise that gets you to break a habit. Because if you stay with the habit, you're just always going to do it like this in a stunted way. You don't even know it's stunted until a discipline opens you up
Yes.
You know what I mean? And so I was just going back to something we said earlier, because I know the conversations. I want this to be interesting to Rupert if he watches this too. But thinking about the brain, right? And I implied that the stomach and the brain could be as above, so below, right? So anytime great philosophers, teachers, Jesus, right? When they getting ready to we getting ready to go off, right? We're gonna go fast for like 40 days, man. We're not gonna eat, right? So they're clearing this part of the brain. And all of a sudden, whoa, they got another awareness. So to break those habits, I think that you have to invoke some kind of discipline that's going to open up. Imagine that this is the lower brain, like lower Egypt.
Right. I think that's a very good point, and I think discipline is an excellent. It's almost counterintuitive. Discipline is a way to break out of a habit, even though discipline is also to develop a good habit too.
Right, right.
In some cases, but you're so right that it's amazing how you can use it as a way to find something new too. And
Yeah,
that's a great thing to remember.
yeah. Like the discipline, I'm gonna stop eating sugar for this month,
Yeah,
and then
yeah.
watch. Whoa! All of a sudden, I feel like, wow, yeah, the discipline to break these constants that Rupert Sheldrake is
what I'm
implying.
talking about are certain constancies, constant things. That's what Sheldrake was talking about, that there are less rules of nature than habits.
Yes.
And this kind of habit, like it's a habit. It's like, oh, this is the way we go. This is the way we go habitually. And then all of a sudden that habit evolves.
Yes.
The habit evolves and music evolves. I mean, we saw the evolution of music with John Cage. He did avant-garde music in the 60s. It really put people on edge.
And I really want to elevate music in this in this system that we're kind of talking about of morphic resonance. I think I almost want to say that music is at a foundational level of the cosmos itself, of the world, and the way all these proportions, no matter what you are or where you are, there's a musical overlay in the cosmos that informs everything on an atomic level,
yes,
on a macro level, and that when you resonate with that musical universe, then you are in accordance with the Tao, basically.
Yeah, the Tao.
Yeah. And Jay, there's a bass player that played with Weird Al. Jay, I can't think of his last name right now. Bass player, huh?
Stephen J.
Stephen J. Yes, right. And he talked about studying in Mali with the Dogon people, and they describe music as like what we say is God was actually music, and that music was like it was conscious. And the way they said it was the way that you know your instrument. When you play a guitar, you might even name it. B.B. King calls this guitar Lucille. The way that you know your instrument, the instrument is conscious. It has a small consciousness to it, but it doesn't know you the way you know it. So when you play the instrument is aware that, like we're aware the wind is blowing, but we don't know where it comes from. But we're aware, wow, if the wind was music, we know it's coming every day. We can feel that music. We can feel the wind. We don't know where it's coming from. So he says the instrument is aware of you playing it, but you know it the way it doesn't know you. He said that's the way music knows us. The way we don't know music is it's just like the instrument that doesn't know you.
I was saying earlier in my notes too to you guys that really it kind of we're the instrument.
Yes.
And what we're playing is the tool.
Yes.
Yeah.
Our instrument, we're receiving all this, and we're using a tool to express what it is we're receiving every day, 24/7.
Yes. Yes.
Here's a tool I use. We use the tool of art. We use the tool of, music. We use the tool of any expressive tool we can find to express what it is that we're resonating to at all times.
I was just looking at a book this morning called the Urantia book, and I don't know.
Urantia! Oh my God!
Oh, Sun Ra used to pass that book out.
Yeah, so like I was looking.
Boulder had that
I wanted
book.
to look up some musical quotes in the Urantia book because I thought it was fascinating, and this one stuck out to me. Harmony, the music of the 7 levels of melodious association. Okay, now that's is the one is the one universal code of spirit communication. Music, such as Urantia mortals, humans, understand, attains its highest expression in the schools of Jerusalem, which is supposed to be the capital of our galaxy or something, the system headquarters where semi-material beings are taught the harmonies of sound. And then it all goes on to say, forever, music will remain the universal language of men, angels, and spirits.
Boom. In the beginning was the muse. Something that vibrated was
It
always in the
sound.
beginning.
In the
Right.
beginning was the word, and the word was a sound. And that's what
Yeah.
I start my talks with this. In the beginning was the
Logos.
word.
Logos.
Logo.
Yeah. Yeah.
the
Yeah. And if it wasn't the word, it was something that vibrated upon the waters of the deep, you know?
vibratory. And
Right.
that's what Rupert Sheldrake is talking about, vibratory systems.
Yeah.
So
Vibratory, yes.
So
I think it's been going on for eternity. That's my little, thing to really blow everybody's mind is
That was good.
So
we're
in
at the end of eternity. That's pretty intense. That means anything is possible.
Yes. And what was cool about what you read was there was the diatonic nature, right? They said that, what did they say, the seven
They
orders?
said there's 7 levels of melodious association.
Do, re, mi, fa, sol, la, ti. Do, let's start again, right? The light goes through the prism and all of a sudden you see the scale, 7 colors. There it is in another octave.
That's a deep,
and so forth and so on. You know, you talked about the periodic table. You know, how hydrogen was what, 0 and was 1, and then water was 2, and then it keeps going on. And then something is 16, which is the octave. The periodic table is musical too.
absolutely.
You know about the book Nada Brahma. And Michael told me about that in an interview that I did with him at Wooten Woods, by the way. And it means the world is sound. But I was asking some people in an Indian restaurant, what does Nada Brahma really mean to you? And they said, everything in the universe is created from sound. And then my friend Raj was telling me about Nod, N-A-A-D. There's 2 types of Nod. Anahat Nod, Anahata Nod is the unstruck sound, the ultimate reality of everything being sound, the Big Bang, whatever it is. And then there's the Ahata Nod, which is the struck sound. So we have struck sound all the time, you know, in music. I mean, that's all, but the underlying, the sound that doesn't have anything striking it, that seems like related to me, to morphic resonance, to this sound being the center, maybe even the causation of everything.
Sound that is received. So the sound that is received,
yes,
do a reportage back, and we strike a sound.
right. Yes,
how we're subjectively receiving that sound.
Yeah, and Jefferson, think about where they do the experiment on the piano, where they just hold these notes down, and then they strike a note over there, and then you'll see the notes over here ringing that are in resonance with that note. They haven't been struck. They're just resonating to it, right? To me, that relates to the monkeys are learning to wash their potatoes over here, and there's monkeys over there that's resonating with it.
Yeah,
it relates to, okay, we're gonna let people figure out the crossword puzzle the night before, and then the next day a whole bunch of people resonating it because it's in the field.
Yep.
You know what I'm saying? And it's like, to me, I've seen bands and people get popular like that. All of a sudden, man, it just resonates and everybody knows. We got to go see this band. You know, I saw that with Dave Matthews Band, man. They got big so fast.
They did.
Yeah, and they're personal friends. Carter Beaufort, the drummer, is a personal friend of mine, right? So we used to go see them play around the corner. I'm with the Flecktones, and we go see them play the little rock club. So quick, we were opening for them at a Coliseum, man. And I'm going, are they really going to fill this place up?
It's wild.
And that place filled up so fast. And the people were just resonating, man. I couldn't understand one word Dave Matthews was saying. And everybody was singing the words. That was pure that was straight morphic resonance right there, man.
So another point that I get from Sheldrake is, you know, he says we resonate with ourselves the most, so we know ourselves the best. But I think it comes back from the ancestors. You know, you resonate from your mother and father, and I can feel that in many ways. And Patty, you were talking about how it time and space, how it relates to that. I don't quite understand, but so that's coming from the past. But can't we also, if we're tuned in, I don't even know what that means, project, create the future? I mean,
Ecclesiastes.
we
Well,
decide what we, I want to go to the store. I want to make a painting. And so you begin to lay out the energetic fields around you toward that goal. Even I want to meet someone, or I want to do this, or I want to, so isn't there really a very positive aspect to be tapped into that, I don't know about creates a better world, but
I think
Yeah.
it
it's
does.
as if when you're talking about setting an intention,
Yeah.
you set an intention just like the person sets the intention to go home, and the dog picks it up and is at the door 20 minutes before the
So you
owner
have the
arrives.
intention to have a better world, and it will be better.
Yes.
And the more people that can resonate with that,
right.
because there's, unfortunately, I mean, Rupert does ask this question, and why is there so much beauty in the world? And I would also ask a counter question, not to be contrary, but why is there so much ugliness in the world
We
too?
were talking about discord earlier.
Yeah. And yeah, exactly. And I, in one way, ugliness can't exist without beauty, and vice versa. Beauty can't exist without ugliness in a lot of ways, because you don't have anything to compare it to.
Exactly. Yeah. Nature works with
Yeah,
contrast.
Vic
It needs
talks about that.
contrast. And also, if you look at something that you think is ugly and you look closer, it becomes beautiful, and you look even closer, it becomes ugly again. Then you look even closer, it's beautiful again. So things, ugliness, beauty, and not beauty kind of go in these dimensional levels as well, and so,
Mhm.
but I do feel like intention to have a better world is part of what Jefferson is after here. And I think music plays a very important role in that.
And I would say too, to answer Rupert Sheldrake's question, based off I had a one-on-one with Dr. Ricketts before he passed away, and he showed me a lecture that he got nominated for a Nobel Prize for. And in that lecture, at the end of it, he showed all of this proportion, and how proportion led to what it is that we know of as beauty. He says nobody has to teach it. You just inherently know it, right? And he said this, he said, at the final phase of all of nature's doings and unfolding and creation, the final phase is always art. The final phase, when you see a rose, like, we don't know how to get water to go up to the top leaf of a tree. That's mechanical. We're still trying to figure out plumbing to equal the tree, right? But at the end of the day, the flower is beautiful, and it smells good, and it creates life. The bees come, and the bees are seeing colors that we can't even see. There is so much genius going on, and what Rupert Sheldrake is pulling the cover back. It's not only that nature and what he's talking about is conscious, it's genius, man.
Yeah.
Like, who can think of something like that? You know what I mean? Okay, we're talking about tracking, right? And they're not even looking at the tracks now. They're looking at a silver cord. Well, if we look at Rupert talked about butterfly wings, how beautiful they are. Bug wings, right? You can look up this scientist, Grebennikov, and he's talking about this material under bug wings and butterfly wings that create levitation. It's
Look,
not just aerodynamics. Nice.
The look and sound
This-
of light.
that is on a harmonograph. That's a 2-to-1 ratio on a lateral harmonograph.
Yes. Okay.
Octave.
Yeah. That's a language.
Look at that.
And
That's a language.
that's why I think that when you look at those things, that if we're really so far into the future already, then everything is possible. I mean, a lot of this is only, if you try to give me the physics of morphic resonance, it would be very difficult to do. And even for Mr. Sheldrake, I'm sure he might have trouble. And then maybe that's why he has trouble with other biologists, is he can't quite come up with the physics of it.
They're quite hostile to him.
Yeah, I know, and that's regrettable. But
He's pulling back the curtain on a big story.
he is,
Yeah.
he is, but I just think that in a lot of ways, if you have an eternal universe, all of it becomes quite simple, because it's already, all possibility is right here as we speak, as we live.
Yeah, and Maharishi used to talk about, the being as the field of all possibilities.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
Yeah.
It's not a new idea. Obviously, it can't be a new idea.
Yeah, but
Yeah.
recognizing it.
Yeah, but remember, before we talked here, I was saying the field of all possibilities is quite a range.
It's quite a range.
It's quite
It's
a
quite a
range
range.
from the coherent to the completely horrifically incoherent. So that's the field of all possibilities. And that's what's interesting to posit. And that's why music is so healing, because music makes coherent what feels incoherent in someone's daily life. They can turn to music and be lifted out temporarily from the incoherence in their lives, from the discord in their
And it
lives.
brings such clarity to the now. And, because you
Right.
have the eternal past and you have the eternal future and you have the now. And then the musician is going to ride that wave, is going to surf that wave, that spiral, and they're going to bring out the future right here in the now. It's just going to just surf into the future. Yeah.
Nice. Yeah. Wow, man.
Okay.
Yeah.
I don't know.
Wow.
This is so great.
The surf into the now. Wow. Yeah. And to me, I just like the way it just challenges your imagination. Again, when we start looking at bug wings, I remember seeing a documentary and they were just saying a bumblebee is not aerodynamic. Those little wings should not even be able to lift it up. But yet it can fly like a stealth fighter.
Yeah.
What is going on?
Who
Right?
knows?
And that same material that creates lift is under those wings. The butterfly. If you wipe there's a material called cotton, CHATIN. If you wipe that off a butterfly's wing, it can't fly. You haven't heard its wings, but there's something about that material that's creating lift.
Hmm.
So we're talking about nature is dealing with some levitational principles and stuff going on in nature.
Yeah.
I mean, this is ridiculous,
It's ridiculous.
Like, how does a trout swim upstream?
Yeah.
He's flying on the Kia Sea.
Right. So now we got to go to Victor Schauberger, and he tells you a trout is sliding up the stream of water like a bar of soap, because the water is hitting its oval body and it's creating that toroid, and the toroid is sucking it up the stream of water like a bar of soap. This is nature. Like, who's figuring this out?
Yeah. And I'm sure that's how interstellar travel will work, is something like that too.
Yeah, because again, time is a pool. Time is a pool. I mean, it's like, to me, exit ramps are like the entrance to black holes. When you come out on the other end, you got all kinds of stuff over there.
Yeah, also a new world.
It's a whole new world. So I just think that, I believe that the reason why Rupert Sheldrake is getting so much hostility is because he's about to pull the curtains back on a story that's so huge. Not only is nature and stuff conscious, like the Dogon said, but it's super genius. It's like we got little microcomputers.
Oh, yeah.
And you're looking at a quantum supercomputer that's creating all this order. And
we're plugged into that fractal. So, you don't have to separate yourself out from it. That's the beauty, is you can plug right in to that genius. And that's really the mystery, is how we as these conscious beings can partake of that other consciousness,
Right.
and be a legit part of it, and connected to it. That's really awesome.
I'll call. He's talking about like in Star Wars, how people didn't believe in the Force anymore. Well, Rupert Sheldrake said, "Well, guess what, guys? There is a Force.
Force is coming back,
and the Force is coming back."
Yes.
Remember too, we're talking about force, we're talking about intention, we're talking about all this stuff. It sounds really good, but when you get in a groove, everybody knows, when you get in a groove of intention, you can run into all kinds of discord and all kinds of obstacles. And the idea is to recognize that that's going to happen.
Yeah.
So you stay coherent and you're navigating. And one of the things that music does is it helps you to navigate the discord of that stream of consciousness that you must go down if you're to achieve whatever end it is you're to achieve. So what music helps is it helps you to maintain that. It's almost like an earthy, what a earth does for a stream. It acts like a berm and it channels the water. And so music helps you to channel and stay on.
It really does. It really does. And I think also ties into what Roy was saying about the discipline changing, because, you know, to really participate in music fully, you have to have a certain amount of discipline, at
Yeah.
least that I know of. I
Yeah.
mean, yes, there are prodigies and things like that, but you know, it's to unlock this like a game. You got to unlock the next level. You got to
Yes.
play that game.
Well,
Yes.
the discipline is there, yeah, but discipline gives way to sheer love of the
Oh
thing.
yeah,
Sheer
absolutely.
desire.
I'm just
You
yeah.
start with discipline, but you just want to show up because it gives back
Oh yeah.
20,000 fold.
And that's
Yeah.
what drives, and I think that's what drives us as musicians, is it gives so much more. You know, the more you put into it, the more it gives. And
Yeah.
Yeah, and somebody said the closer you get to truth, the closer you get to paradox. And so when we talk about a cell splitting into two cells, and you ask, is it division or multiplication? You know, and it's, you see what I'm saying? There's the paradox, because either answer is right.
right,
You know,
particle or wave. Is it particle or a wave?
yeah. So you know, we're talking like that, right? So we're talking about discipline and freedom is the same thing too, because you don't get the freedom without
Right.
discipline. See what I
Right.
mean?
Good.
If you're gonna unlock this part of the brain, you can't fill it up with Doritos all the time.
No.
You know?
And so also, if you're a musician or a writer, you know, when that muse comes, you have to be open to it somehow. I don't
Yeah.
100% know what that means,
Yeah.
but I think it relates to also what John Young and Anna were talking about, how this ability to kind of be one consciously or something with the rest of nature is our birthright. Well, what's the best model for that? I've been going down this Native American rabbit hole recently. You know,
Wow.
Haudenosaunee, the Great Law of Peace, and the way that they were just, you know, they lived their lives in a gift economy, basically, with gratitude for everything.
Nice.
Now, sure, they had trouble and they warring and all these things, but you know, it seems like the more you can be open to that, and maybe that's the morphic resonance too.
Well,
You know,
yeah. You know, Rupert talked about meditation a lot. You know, as being as a way of letting the mind tune into a larger mind, and I think meditation is part of the doorway of opening yourself, you know, to this other kind of level. You
and,
know.
and when we had those conversations about Ho'oponopono, I think came to a sort of a conclusion or consensus that practice of gratitude, forgiveness, acceptance, and love opens you more to the muse, opens you more to the whatever's out there that you want.
Yeah, yeah, yeah.
We
Dr.
talked-
Hugh, go ahead.
I was gonna say, we talked in one of our our first conversations, we talked about healing and forgiveness and things like that. And that's why I want to bring music into this, because it's almost like music is the forgiver. It forgives for you if you cannot, because some things are unforgivable.
Hmm.
And you can't talk about general forgiveness when there's horrific things going on. But what music does, it calms you down enough. That's why I was saying earlier, remember the clenched fist?
Yeah.
It unclenches.
Can you say it again, though? Say it again for people who haven't heard it. That was good.
Yeah, early with the clenched fist. If you have the clenched fist, what music does and what morphic resonance will do, if it's allowed to do, it will unclench your fist so that forgiveness or let go can occur. And it occurs, I would say, in the morphic field. It can occur in the morphic field because you're not opposing it any longer. All you have to do is cease your opposition to, whatever it is you're opposed to, whatever it is you're against, whatever it is you're struggling to forgive. And the whole idea of forgiveness, as it's laid down top, it's always top down. You're the one that needs to forget. No, just let go.
Just let
All
go.
you have to do is let go, and music helps that process.
Yeah, it
That's
does.
what I'm trying to say. It always helps that process. And that's why I was saying early on, getting back to 432 would help it even more, because it would lessen the discord of being able to navigate in this really sometimes chaotic world.
Yeah.
And the chaos is born not of nature. I mean, it'd be fine if all we had to deal with were volcanoes, tornadoes, hurricanes, natural things. No, we have to deal with human minds that come up with really weird things.
Yeah.
And we have to navigate that somehow. We shouldn't have to navigate that.
Yeah. That
part of
I
the
And
agree with
music
concept.
that.
helps all of it. I'm just trying to
Yeah.
say.
And
Music
it's funny.
helps, and that
Yeah.
includes the rest. That includes the musical rest, which I
Yes.
think is
Yes.
a more important thing to
Mhm.
always remember, that music isn't always about sound. Sometimes it's about no sound.
Right.
Space.
And it's hard to wrap your mind around, but without no sound, it would all be nonsense.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Right.
And
Yeah.
that's also the stillness
That's
at
the-
the center you need.
That's the white space in art.
Yeah.
You know, you gotta have empty space. You gotta have empty
Got it,
space.
and
You
yeah,
can't see
got it.
anything.
you got to.
Yeah.
There's no
Yeah.
escape.
Yeah.
There's no escape from
Well,
that.
I think
Yeah, and yeah, it's so nice when you're talking about we shouldn't have to navigate this, but I think that life has a test, and it's like we're on a hero's journey, as Joseph Campbell would say. You know, life is a hero's journey of discovery, and on that journey, you know, you're gonna have mentor figures, and you're gonna have people that oppose you, but it's for the obstacle course it's the training, you know,
Well, it's
the
part.
obstacle.
I would say it's part of the training, and I say what music you're talking about music. That's why, just like mathematics, there's some really wonderful coherent equations. Music has coherent equations. It helps when you're dealing with human minds, what the human mind can come up with. It would be, like I said, it would be so much better to just have to deal with what nature is doing because it's a natural occurrence. Whereas the human mind, you know, it's very difficult to navigate sometimes.
yeah, that's where we are too, I think, a little bit.
And that's where we are, and those kinds of behaviors, you know, it for me, it's
We need a very big retuning of society. Let me
Yes.
just say
yeah.
that. Society
Yeah.
needs to.
That's for me is not the test. That for me is not the heroic test. The heroic test is being able to navigate around a volcano.
Right.
And I don't want to see a volcano in my fellow human being.
Right.
Sorry.
Right.
I'd rather, you know, I'd rather present that human being with something beautiful.
Yeah.
Such as a
Nice.
beautiful chord.
And on that note,
Open key tuning.
yeah, is that an open tuning?
Yeah, it was.
Yeah.
Yeah. And it's something
Okay.
about like when the tuning is right, it's not even just the tones, but it's all the overtones.
Oh,
It's
yeah.
all the invisible stuff that's happening too.
Overtones.
So
And you
when
can't
that-
quite get the right open tuning. If you just use a tuner, you're not going to get it. You're not going to get that perfect open tuning.
yeah, because nature works in this what they call irrational numbers.
That's right.
Perfection is overrated here. We gotta, you know.
That's why I didn't want to hit
Whatever.
any. I didn't want to hit any frets there. That was pure open tuning, and that's the most pure.
Yeah.
Very nice.
Pythagoras lives.
Yeah. And it's funny. I think it was even Pythagoras in his order. It was almost like a secret society. They knew about irrational numbers, but they weren't allowed to teach it. They weren't
Yeah,
allowed.
they murdered people because irrational numbers were.
Were talked about.
They
Yeah.
were a bad bunch.
Yeah, they weren't. You weren't supposed to get into irrational numbers, but guess what? Nature uses them. You know.
That lasted for a long time because back in the I believe in the 19th century, they started to discover the mathematics behind fractals, and they called them monsters.
Right.
They
Right.
didn't want to look at them because they were too scary and freaky and out of control. And they said, no, those are monsters. Let's go this way. Let's
But
go
that's
back
what-
over here.
That's what Einstein was calling spooky action at a distance.
Yeah, quantum mechanics. That was like, whoa.
It's spooky. They're monsters. But see,
Right.
that's what I'm trying to say. That's what the human mind does with what nature does. And we should be able to adapt to what nature is presenting us
Right.
and creating.
And that's what the established science is doing to Rupert Sheldrake, because he's trying to pull the
Exactly.
cover back on this, all this stuff that people have said, no, we're not gonna look at that. He's like, whoa, wait a minute now, right?
Yeah.
And so
Yeah.
to me, I love it, man, because it reminds me of a statement. They say truth is stranger than fiction.
Yeah.
So we talking about nature, right? And we were talking about bug wings and how, wow, you said there's levitation going on. And then a friend of mine who's a chef, He said, yeah, man, you know, we got a microwave and there's a roach that's been living in a microwave, right? They're making coffee, nuking all day long. There should be no way. I told him, I said, dude, just film it for me. Just film it. Right? He filmed it for me. He said, here's the coffee. There's the roach. We putting it in. We nuking the coffee, and the roach goes when the microwave comes on. The roach just crouches down. Woo. And then when they take the coffee out, they gotta kind of bang the wall, and the roach comes back to life. Now, what's going on here? You know what I'm saying?
I don't know.
I'm just saying that to say that when we talk about morphogenic, and we're on the same level as the wave acting like a wave when we don't look at it, but when we look at it, it acts like a particle. I mean, to me, this, you know what I mean? This is Dr. Seuss what I'm saying here.
Roy, this is a great lesson for us all. The roach is adapting to a natural, well, it's kind of unnatural, to a natural occurrence in its world. This is some kind of natural outer occurrence. It's adapting. It's getting under the frequency somehow, and it's not being fried. It's not
being fried.
It's adapting. It's navigating. And
but
when it comes back to life, it's not creating a religion out of
it. Right, but maybe, you know, like maybe it's able to create some kind of field, you know, like.
Yes,
but it's remembering. It's also just remembering what all those roaches that went before from the roach family vibration.
Exactly.
It knows how to roach out. Let me tell you.
It's thinking, I've endured much worse.
Right. I will be here longer.
You know, I'm gonna make it. I'm gonna make it.
I can't handle a roach motel. I can handle a microwave, but I can't handle a roach motel.
Roach motel. I gotta check out. I gotta check out of that.
Right, but that's so profound. It gets almost foolish sounding, and I just think that that's when it's getting good. You know.
So, you know, if we can put our intentions a little bit on, you know, just getting back to the natural obstacles as opposed to a lot of the ones that my son says humans are overrated. I think he's about right on that. Anyway, I think we probably at the end, if anybody has anything else you want to say, I almost hate to say that because then.
Well, let me just respond to your son right there. In a way, a lot of times, especially after listening to Anna talk about animal communications, like humans have no idea the depth that animals are communicating. So he says humans are overrated. Yeah, because a lot of times the humans are overrating their ability to communicate in language, not knowing that the animal understands your language. When Anna is talking to the panther at the end of that documentary, and through the whole documentary, she's communicating with those animals, and she says it's almost like dialing a radio station. And when you dial it, and all of a sudden, whoa, you get it. That's the communication goes back and forth, and they're communicating almost just like us. The panther said the panther didn't like its name Diablo. The panther asked about two cubs that came in when it came in. See, now the humans are overrating themselves, thinking only we know about that.
I think humans are excommunicated, basically, is what they are.
Maybe we're the last ones to know.
Yeah. I said at our early conversations, I did a lot of work with horses, equine experiential learning, and basically it would be the 1,200-pound guru of the horse that would act out the emotional issue of the workshop participant every time. And then I would draw the energy around the horse as it was interacting with the human, and it invariably it would act out, and that's all vibration. It's all vibration, and the horse is picking it up. It will pick up the fear. It will pick up the issue. One woman who had an issue with her abandoning mother had her back turned to the horse, and the horse normally was this very frisky pinto, didn't like to be ridden. It was an orange horse. And it started weaving because she was over relating to the horse with her back turned, and the horse started weaving like this and went crashed down on its haunches and went over to its side. And so when the woman turned around, there was an unavailable horse. I mean, we watched this happened every time. The horse literally acted out her issue, and the woman, of course, was devastated because there was no horse to relate to. It was lying on its side, completely, that happened all the time. And I draw the energy on the sideline.
People really need to, I think, some of the takeaways of the many from this conversation is that
Wow.
you really have to learn how to feel and intuit and tune in to these fields that you don't see, but you can certainly feel. Animals are doing it. Why aren't you doing? You're doing it a little bit. Oh yeah, I felt someone stare at me. Well, you know what? That's 101, basic 101. You know, when the alien gets off the ship, they're going to be straight talking to you right into your brain, right into your mind. It might not be in your brain, who knows, but whatever. They're going to just talk to you direct.
Yeah.
And so you might as well start practicing to learn how to do that now.
Well, I guess we've gotten away from our birthright. And one thing that Rupert Sheldrake is basically saying is that it's out there. You just have to realize it. And I think we can,
Yeah.
you know, bring some of this forward, talk to some other musicians, see where else we can go. It's been a fabulous conversation. Man, I thank all of you so much. Peter, Patty, Roy, what a great
Fantastic.
conversation.
I love all of you. I love you all. You're all wonderful people.
And happy
Yeah.
birthday, Peter.
Happy
Yeah,
birthday.
and
It is a happy
yeah, happy birthday, Peter and Jefferson. If we did do another part to this, it's something about communication seems to be the running thread through all of this. You know, because
Yeah.
we talk about animals and nature communicating symbols and cymatics. To me,
Very
the
cool.
symbols are actually a potential language. Mathematics is a universal language, but music is a universal language. That's emotional. So
Yeah.
the ancients used to
I
say that
love that.
music
I
is
love
even
that.
greater. So
Yeah.
it's this idea that, like, and then you said maybe we're the last to know. Humans are overrated. Maybe we're the last to know. All of nature's communicating. The trees talk to the other trees, and they need something minerals. They're sending to each other, but
Yeah.
we're the last to know.
We might have
You know?
forgotten, or maybe we forgot. We might
Yeah,
have.
like Avatar.
We
Yeah.
forgot how to know. Yeah.
We forgot how to know. You know, so in this universal language is what we're talking about with music. We're bringing morphogenic resonance to music, which is a universal language. The music we're trying to communicate, right? If somebody says this is the only tuning you got to tune to, A440, which is not the natural thing, at least we want to know about it to see how this language is supposed to speak.
Mhm.
And I think that's what we're talking about. And I can echo your son who says we're overrating. A lot of times we're overrating ourselves because
Yeah.
we don't know the language of the other
Yeah.
species out there.
Yeah. I think a
Yeah.
lot of the animals probably think we're overrated.
Yeah, they're playing down to us a lot of times. The dolphin,
Yeah.
oh, you want me to do this trick?
yeah.
They know 10 times more of what we're trying to say.
Yes.
That's what I was trying to say with the horses.
Yes.
When we
Horses.
would do a pre-meditation before encountering the horse, and you had to be in alignment. You had to be really in alignment. You could not be in any sort of discord, or the horse would not interact.
That's pretty much true of
Wow.
every animal I've ever encountered, though. You have to be in alignment. You know, if you can get into alignment with that animal, you'll have a great time.
Yeah.
Absolutely.
Wow.
All right. Thank you, everybody. Thank you, people, for listening.
Thank
And
you.
Thank you, Jeff.
all right.
Thank you.
Have a great day.
See you next time, everybody.
Yeah.
See you next time.
Bye all.